I'll put that question straight to you. Are the Labour Party an effective opposition?
Absolutely. We are holding the government to account, pointing out their failures across the board, and also coming forward with clear, compelling policies such as the windfall tax on oil and gas companies to pay for reduced energy bills, such as the removal of VAT from energy bills, such as a proper industrial policy to get our economy firing on all cylinders, rebooting our manufacturing sector in particular. And the government's not really coming forward with anything apart from lots of divisive issues, whether it's their position on the rail strikes completely failing to get the talks moving, position on the Northern Ireland Protocol, the Rwanda deportations. They're just looking for opportunities to divide the country rather than pulling us all together, getting us actually working again after the pandemic, and also dealing with our international partners in a more constructive way. So we need an opposition that is strong and united. That's what we are on the Labour benches, and we're ready for the general election, and we're ready to form that next Labour government.
See, Stephen, I've got to be honest, you say that the Tories are trying to divide the country and that Labour, you're a very strong, united party. To me, I don't think you seem united at all. In fact, I would question whether or not you think people really, truly know what the Labour Party even stands for anymore. I'll pick the most recent example of these strikes. You're supposed to be the party of the workers. The workers are now on picket lines, and Labour Party, to me, don't seem to know if you're coming or going. Your leader's saying to you, don't get on those picket lines. 20-odd of you are saying, no thanks, and you're getting on the picket lines anyway. Who are you as a party?
Well, the job of the Parliamentary Labour Party is to focus on the government and make it absolutely clear that the reason these strikes are happening is because the government wants them to happen. Totally failing to sit down and get the train operators and the trade unions talking. And without the government there, those talks are not going to succeed. Grant Shapps knows that. Boris Johnson knows that. And in terms of where we stand as a party on this, it's absolutely clear that we support the right to strike. Workers have got to stand up for their rights, and sometimes that means as a last resort going on strike. But our job in Parliament is to keep the focus on the government, and that is what we're doing. And I think that is really cutting through very clearly. If you see the fact that the recent opinion polls, I think, showing that the government isn't getting this right. And what is absolutely extraordinary is today it's emerged that the government wants to lift the cap on bankers' bonuses. So whilst they're preaching to those hard-working people who got our country through the pandemic that they have to exercise pay restraint, they're saying to the bankers, noses in the trough, lads, keep going, keep raking it in, you'll be fine as long as you, by the way, keep donating to the Conservative Party. It's rank hypocrisy, and Boris Johnson had no answer to that at Prime Minister's questions today.
Stephen, I think we'll agree to disagree. I mean, you think it's clear what the Labour Party stand for. I'm someone that was born and bred Labour, and to me it's absolutely not clear, but we'll park that. We'll agree to disagree on that one. Shadow Immigration Minister, it would be remiss of me not to ask you about what's going on in the Channel. Do you think we've got an emergency situation right now when it comes to these Channel crossings?
Yes, it's absolutely awful that people are making these very dangerous journeys and risking their lives. But the government's Rwanda deportation plan is not going to deter them. There isn't the capacity in Rwanda to take anything like the numbers that might actually act as a deterrent. What we need to do is actually sit down with our the European governments and the EU and get a proper returns agreement in place, and then actually start processing the asylum applications that are here. We've got 37,000 asylum seekers languishing in hotels in this country, costing the British taxpayer £4 million a day. So instead of chasing headlines, Priti Patel should actually be doing the hard work, making the hard yards and solving the problem in a way that it actually is going to work, rather than having this Rwanda policy which is unworkable, extortionately expensive. That flight the other day cost the taxpayer £500,000 and is simply not the right way to deal with the problem, offloading it onto a developing country 4,000 miles away, which itself has a dubious record on human rights.
But Stephen, your idea has been tried, hasn't it? You say that the government should sit down with the Europeans and try and thrash this out. We've tried that. We've spent millions and millions of pounds with the French trying to create solutions there. None of it works. Nearly 12,000 people now have crossed the Channel already this year, which is double where we were this time last year. So the suggestions that you're giving us, they've been tried, they haven't worked. Rwanda is now a last resort.
Well, the other issue is that the government's closed down all the safe and legal routes. They've closed down the Syria resettlement scheme. They're only now getting the Afghanistan citizens resettlement scheme off the ground. We've got 12,000 Afghans who served British forces in Afghanistan, put their lives on the line for us, languishing in hotels here. So, you know, what we've got is a situation where the solutions haven't been tried properly. The fact is that because of Boris Johnson's botched Brexit deal, we left the EU without a successor to the Dublin III regulation. I know it's hard for Boris Johnson and Priti Patel to actually have that constructive dialogue with other governments in Europe because they've burned so many bridges, but that's the reality of international diplomacy. It's a tough message, but you've got to actually sit down, talk, be constructive, rather than chasing headlines and throwing red meat at the Tory backbenches in order to try and keep Boris Johnson in his job. They're putting their party before the country. It's undermining the national interest, and it's the opposite of patriotism.
Yeah, Stephen, I do agree with some of what you're saying there in terms of the medium to longer term strategy. But in the here and now, we have got hundreds of people per day crossing this channel right now. So we don't have these safe routes, we don't have this, we don't have that. The conversations haven't worked. So in the here and now, how would you stop this? The people getting on the boats tomorrow, this afternoon, this evening, how would you stop it right now?
Right now, invest in more decision makers so that we can get the asylum process actually working in this country. Asylum application processing has dropped by 50% since Priti Patel became the Home Secretary. You've got to sit down with the Europeans and talk through these issues. You've got to recognise that the safe and legal routes have to be there because the vast majority of people coming at the moment are actually coming from Afghanistan, and we've seen what the Taliban
But Stephen, this is all medium term. I'm asking you in the here and now. Stephen, that's not answering the here and now. I understand what you're saying, but in the here and the now, tomorrow, you're going to have hundreds more people getting on a boat. How would you stop them today, tomorrow?
Well, we were told that the mere announcement of the Rwanda plan would deter people from crossing the channel. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that that is happening. They're not going to be deterred by that for the reasons I've already explained. So Einstein said that the definition of insanity is when you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. If this plan isn't working, then you've got to actually do the hard graft. Some of the stuff, it's not exciting, it doesn't get you headlines on the front page of the Daily Mail, but it's actually the only stuff that works. Because if you look at why have we had such an uptick in the Channel crossings, it's as soon as all the people smugglers have realised that we didn't have the a successor to Dublin III. So that some years ago we were sending 10,000 people whose asylum applications were unsuccessful back to the places that they'd come from. That number has dropped to just 800 last year. So, the answers are there in the numbers, but I'm afraid that because Priti Patel wants to chase headlines, she's come up with this policy which isn't actually going to work, but which is, throwing red meat to the Conservative backbenchers.
Yeah, I've got to say, I'm not particularly convinced myself that these traffickers are sitting there studying things like Dublin conventions, and that's why they're doing it. I think the person are doing it because they know they're going to get a decent hotel at the end of it, etc.
They 100% are. They're very well informed. They know exactly. It's their business. It's their evil, horrible business. If we had a proper security partnership with Europol and with the French authorities, that would work as well. But this government's burned all the bridges. But I can tell you categorically that the people smugglers are absolutely on top of what's going on. And once they realised that once they got people to the UK, we had no way of sending them anywhere, that's when you see the massive increase in the boats coming across the channel. It's not a coincidence.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.